Hey, folks, welcome back to Where's Walter? I'm Walter.
I'm Simon. Hello.
And today we're going to be talking cocktails and food history. Hey, folks, welcome back. And this is so exciting. I've got, from the Food Network and a big-time author, Simon Majumdar. Hi, Simon.
Hello, mate. How are you?
So am I saying that right? Is it Majumdar or Majumdar?
The J is a little soft, so it should be a little Majumdar.
Majumdar.
Think of it in 3 syllables. Majumdar.
Majumdar.
That's how I usually try. Majumdar, but you can say it anyway. Trust me, I've heard every single pronunciation possible. So whichever way you say it is just fine by me.
Hey, with an Italian name like Biscardi, I've pretty much heard it all myself.
Yeah,
right?
I'm sure you have.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us today. I know. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. I mean, you've started this podcast. You've been an author. What all is going on with you?
It's been until right now, where we're obviously all in lockdown in our various locations. We're in Los Angeles. It's been really busy, so I've been doing a lot of speaking. I go and do cooking demos. I go and do talks. I was about to go and moderate a history festival or do some work at that.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, I'm doing a lot of TV shows. We just finished airing Guy's Tournament of Champions, where I was one of the kitchen reporters reporting back to Guy on this big competition, kind of March Madness, East-West, which was a big hit.
Really nice hat that you were wearing.
I wore hats all the time. I've taken them off today because I want people to see that I can occasionally have hair, even if it's not terribly... Even if it's not terribly kind of firm on top, but at least I can do it. It'll go soon. And this, I'm not sure about this. I'm looking at the picture. I'm kind of it's pretty full on.
It is pretty thick. I mean, you're entering Santa Claus territory, I think.
Well, I might keep this for a while. And it's been about a month. So I've been doing that, and obviously while we've been kind of locked in, apart from going out for my early morning walks, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
You go out at like 5 a.m. around LA. It's because there's no one around, but it's quite interesting.
Right.
But anyway, I come home and then I've been writing the food history podcast. But you've caught me. Now's the perfect time to catch me, because this time of day when we're recording, I've developed my own kind of cocktail hour. Usually on my own, and then we actually have some later. So you were literally just caught me as I have my shaker full of ice. And I was about to make myself...
I happen to have a pitcher full of ice sitting over here. So please.
I think anyone who is smart should never be more than about 2 feet away from a pitcher full of ice.
Yes.
So my favorite cocktail, as you know, because I know we've shared a couple of cocktail evenings, my favorite cocktail is just a proper martini. Okay. I don't like cocktails where people throw too much in. I like it's like I would say a good bartender is a bit like a good chef. Like you test them with an omelette, which is the simplest thing to make, but the hardest thing to make well. And a martini is the hardest thing to make well. So I thought, if you don't mind, while we're talking,
please, I would love this.
I'm going to mix up my martini, so you can, if you don't mind, just. So I've got my shaker full of ice.
Okay.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my gin. Now this is actually. I'm not always the biggest fan of craft gins, because I think that a lot of them try and be too clever and show too much. Sure. So if I'm making a gin martini, I usually use something straightforward. I love Beefeater. It's a terrific gin.
Yeah.
It's gin that's been made for 200 and something years. Right. I've actually been to the distillery in London. They're still making it in the same place. But I thought I'd try it with this. So what I'm going to do is here. I don't know if you can see my shaker, but I've got my little measure.
Yep.
So 1 ounce at the top, half an ounce at the bottom. So I'm just going to put in, he says, allowing for a little, see what I've got left at the bottom of this bottle. So that's why. So we've got 1. And what I usually look for, I'll be about there, 1.5 ounces of gin for me. At this time of day, it's an afternoon cocktail.
All right.
I've got a tiny bit more. I might as well finish this off.
You might as well finish it off. I mean, why leave it in the bottle? Seriously.
Well, it'll only evaporate. So then I've got my gin. And then what I'm going to do, I've got these. So the original martini, what people often don't know, it had a splash of orange bitters in it.
Oh. Okay.
So if you've got orange bitters, this one is made by a gentleman he just passed last year, a guy called Gary Reagan. He was from Yorkshire in England, but lived in America for a long time.
Okay.
So I'm just going to put in 3 drops of that. You can put in as much as you like.
Sure.
To be honest, you don't have to put it in. Now, while I'm doing that, I've got my cold glass, slightly less cold because we were chatting before, but a chilled glass.
Sure.
I've got my little ones here. I've got this one. And then what I'm going to do is, traditionally, a martini was 50-50 vermouth and gin.
Okay.
And by definition, a martini is gin. People will put vodka in it, but it isn't a martini then. Okay. It's actually so by definition it's a drink with gin.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a tiny bit into the bottom of. You can't see me there.
That's fine.
I'm going to put a tiny bit.
Okay, just a splash there.
And what we're going to do is just roll that around. I want to coat the inside.
Now, what is that doing for you?
So what you're going to do is you're going to get all the flavor of the vermouth, but you don't want too much of it in your drink.
Oh.
Okay. So there we've got our wash glass. Now, here's the other key thing. We all know our James Bond,
sure.
Shaken or stirred.
Sure.
Now, again, by definition, a martini should be stirred because here's the science behind it. This is where we need Alton Brown, but here's the science is if you're making a cocktail that is all alcohol, which this is, so this is vermouth, which is alcohol, bitters, which are alcohol, and gin, obviously of different levels of alcohol, there's nothing to be emulsified. So you don't want to shake it. If I was going to do, say, like a gimlet where I was putting fruit in this, or a fruit core, then I would shake it because the alcohol and sugars in the fruit need emulsifying. This one, all I'm trying to do is to dilute and chill.
Okay.
I'm going to put it down so I don't spill it.
Sure.
So you can see me doing it. So it's about 20 turns.
20 turns.
And the 20 turns is going to allow about half an ounce of water to go into the dilution of your gin and your bitters.
Huh.
And what I tend to do is I hold the outside. I've got a metal glass here. You've got a glass one.
I do.
If you've got a glass one, the moment you see the outside of that glass beginning to chill up, that's when you've probably released about enough. Okay. Here, what I do is I'm holding it at the bottom. I've got a little napkin here. But when I hold it, if it gets to the point where it's almost too cold to touch, that's when I've got enough in there. But usually I say to people about 20 turns.
20 turns. Wow.
Now, here's the other thing that people may not know, that if you do, that's plenty. I've probably done more than 20 there because I was talking. Now, you've got, so what people don't know is there is actually a drink with a martini that is shaken, but it's has a different name.
Okay.
It's actually called a Bradford. That's it. So a martini style that's shaken actually has a different name. So now what I tend to do, just because some ice may release, even though you're stirring, I double stir. So I have my strainer.
Okay.
You can see my standard strainer.
Yeah.
And then I have my little strainer there.
Ah. Getting fancy over there. Although I will say I have a little strainer too. It's hiding in the
and then
cabinet.
Your garnish. Now, again, for a lot I people, they like olives. I am not an olive person. So what I tend to do is to get my lemon. So this is a nice aromatic lemon. Sometimes people use a nice Amalfi lemon, a Maya lemon. But you're just going to use your peeler. And we're just going to pull back. And what we're trying to do, if you can see this, Walter, there's no pith.
Okay. Just the very top.
So you don't want the white.
The very top. All right.
Now what we're going to do is squeeze this over the glass. And again, it's hard for me to do this with one hand.
That's fine.
We're going to squeeze this so you can see it.
Squeeze it right in.
And that allows the lemon oil, because really what you're drinking is a Martini is gin in a vermouth wash glass through a slick of oil. Now, sometimes that could be olive, the oil from olives, from brined olives, which is like a dirty martini. That's the brine from the olives.
Sure.
Or it could be from onions, which would be a Gibson. And in this case, it's from a lemon. Then you put your lemon in, and there's your.
Nice.
And I've taken out my earphones, but there's my. Managed to knock out my earphone, which is I haven't even had a drink yet. And I managed to knock. And there's my martini.
Look at that. That's beautiful. I love that. I'm looking up at my screen. Actually, I have this beautiful glow going on behind me from the sun. That's kind of nice. It's almost like Easter.
It is the halo of a martini.
Wow. So I've never seen that trick with the vermouth wash. It's very interesting. So you just kind of get a little flavor?
Sometimes people will put it in the stirrer. But if you just want a small amount, and a martini it's a kick. Mm-hmm. It's a kick of a drink. Mm-hmm. It's all alcohol. So what you don't want to do is just overpower it. If you want more vermouth, what you could do is wash the glass and then just leave the rest in the bottom. Mm. And then it'll mix in, and that'll give you a slightly wetter martini. So a dry martini is what I just basically made. Okay. And the dry basically refers to the amount of vermouth that's in the martini. No, so if someone asks you how dry do you like it if you ever order a martini, just say to them, tell them how much vermouth you like in it. I thought someone was calling me, but that's very weird. It's all. So what are you going to make?
I don't know. So before we started, I think we were talking about a Manhattan. Is that what we were talking about? A little bourbon, a little vermouth, and some lemon?
Yeah. Well, you can garnish it. Sometimes I have here. I have if I make myself a Manhattan or I make a Rob Roy, which is another of my favorites, I'll have some cherries.
See, I'm not big on the cherry, so I'm going to go with the lemon.
So so you can put a lemon twist. Here's the thing. It's a garnish. So start off with, so get your ice.
I've got my ice.
You want to put 2 ounces or 1.5 ounces, depending on how you're feeling right now, of your bourbon in there. Bourbon,
all right.
So
there's 1 ounce. I'll do about 1.5 ish. All right, there's 1.5. Yeah.
Then you want to put in for me depending on your taste, about 1/2 ounce of sweet vermouth.
1/2 ounce of sweet vermouth. So this is what I'm going to be using there. All right.
And again, you could vary that. Sometimes you'll put in 1/4 ounce of sweet and 1/4 of dry, and that's a perfect Manhattan.
That's a perfect Manhattan.
But what you're making is a sweet Manhattan, so it's a little more sweet.
There's 1/2 ounce right there. Okay.
And then if you have your Angostura bitters or your orange bitters, or what do you have?
I have my Fee Brothers orange bitters.
So I tend to put in just a splash of that. It's not obligatory, but I like that in there.
All right, I put two quick dashes in there.
Now you want to do the stirring that I just showed you.
Stirring. So am I going for 20 here? Is that what I'm doing?
Yep.
I'll hold that up for you. I've already lost count, so I'm going to say 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, I'm going to say that's about 20 right there. All right.
Okay, now you want your glass. Now you could serve this up like me in a martini glass. Yep.
I went ahead.
So strain that into your glass.
I will. I don't have the little guy, but I've got my straight strainer.
You should be fine.
All right. There we go.
And then a twist of lemon.
Twist of lemon. Let's see if I can do this. I usually end up digging in a little deep. I'm going to try and just...
So do it from the end, from the tip towards you.
From the tip towards me.
Yeah, and then you'll get you've cut off a bit of the thing there, but you should have enough to give you a good twist. There you go.
Look at that. No pith. I actually
Perfect.
I got it. So now I just want to twist it. Fold it over.
Just twist it over the glass so the oils float into the glass, and then rub the rim with it.
And rub the rim with it.
All right. Slip it into your drink, and that's your that's your Manhattan. So cheers, my friend.
cheers, my friend. And cheers to everybody out there, too. Very nice. Let's see what this is.
Cheers.
Oh, that's nice. So I'm an old-fashioned guy.
Yeah, me too.
And I have really gotten into Aztec chocolate bitters.
Oh, okay.
And so I will do 2 ounces of rum, 3 to 5 dashes of the Aztec chocolate, and then 3 dashes of the orange bitters. And that is my old-fashioned now. I call it an Aztec old-fashioned.
That's lovely.
Yes, it is. Thank you, man. That's actually really good. I like that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Very nice. Very nice.
I'm gonna sip at mine slowly because that'll definitely have an effect on me.
Yeah, you have about an extra ounce in that thing. When I was in Barbados, we visited the Mount Gay rum distillery over 317 years making rum.
Whoa.
It was amazing. They made me an old-fashioned with about 5 ounces of rum in it.
Wow. You'll feel that.
Man, that's about all I remember. I remember drinking it, and then we were back at the ship, and I was like, wait, weren't we on a tour for 2 hours? So thank you, Simon. Thank you for the cocktail lesson. That was fantastic.
My pleasure.
So you are really all about, your Eat My Globe podcast has really been all about food history. I know you've been writing about food for quite some time, but how did you really start getting into this whole food history kick?
Well, food history has always been a passion. It's always been an obsession of mine. And so I've always been reading about it and kind of boring people with facts that I know and telling them stories. And one of the things I realized, and much as I love doing the shows I do, which I'm very fortunate that I get to do, Guy's Grocery Games or Beat Bobby Flay or, working with Alton on, I appeared on an episode of Good Eats last year, one of his new episodes of Good Eats.
Oh, did you finally do it? Awesome.
Which was fantastic. We did an episode on chicken tikka. Well, he was doing an episode on turkey, and I did an episode on making chicken tikka masala for him, which was really fun.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I've always, I love doing those shows. But one of the things that the nature of the TV shows right now is there weren't many opportunities for me to share, my stories, my history stories, the things that I find out about people in history and find out about what they contributed. They're often quite funny and they're strange and, odd little stories. So I just got to the point where I said, well, and the thing is as well, the book trade that I've written books, obviously a lot of books, and I was in publishing for years. The book trade's tough right now, unless you're a big name.
Yeah.
Selling a cookbook or selling is very tough.
Yeah.
Like any business, unless you've got huge profile. So one of the areas that I think is growing is podcasts. I think a lot of people want to watch podcasts. I listen to them all the time when I go out for my morning walk. And they can be anything. I'll listen to sports. I'll listen to politics. I'll listen to history. I'll listen to any film reviews, whatever. So I was actually talking with a friend who is a producer who we know, a mutual friend, April. And I said, well, maybe we should do something together. And we'd done videos before. And she said, well, I'll produce it. So I started writing. So we've just launched season 4, which is amazing that we're on. And I'm still writing them. So now we're locked down. I'm writing a lot of them.
Okay.
So far we've done the history of fish and chips, the history of gin.
Nice.
We've done the history of chocolate, the history of beer. We've done the history of we did 2 episodes on the last meal served on the Titanic.
Oh,
we
wow.
did. Yeah, we did. That's in season 1. That was a really interesting one, and particularly as today's, I think, is the anniversary of when the Titanic sank. So
okay.
So there you go, and the meals served on the Titanic have a really fascinating history because they inform about the class structure. So it was very much set up under a British class structure with the very upper class and then the lower class who were being shipped across to America as immigrants.
Sure.
So that's really fascinating.
Sure.
We've done episodes on, I'm trying to think what we did more recently. We did a great one on an interview with we do some interviews with them. So we interviewed Ken Burns.
That was amazing.
Well, for me, Ken Burns is one of the greats. And I connected with him on Twitter. I think I was just being complimentary about one of his shows, and he came back and said, "Oh, I'll be happy to be on your podcast." So we actually flew out. I was like, "This is Ken Burns. I'm going to go and sit down." And to be honest, I didn't know whether he'd have any great interest in food or food history. I knew he's a historian, so I hoped he would.
Right.
But it turned out that Ken Burns actually owns a restaurant.
That was a surprise to me when I heard that on the podcast.
Yes.
I was like, wow.
So we sat and had a meal in his restaurant, which was really terrific. And then we came back the next morning, and I interviewed him. And he's, apart from the fact he's just a complete gentleman, he's just a very, very good person to interview. And in the end, it's one of those people who you sit opposite and you go, "You're Ken Burns." And there aren't many people I have that kind of thought process with, because I'm not usually overawed by people's fame or personality. They're either good people or not. Yeah. But he just turned out to be a very nice person.
That's awesome.
So we did a lot of really fun ones. Then we did ones on truffle and lobster. The first episode of season 4 was on the history of champagne.
Yes,
which
we need to listen to that.
Has a great history, because particularly what I like to do is pull out certain threads that people don't know. So the role of women in the history of champagne. So if you drink Veuve Clicquot, Veuve means widow, and it was named after the widow Clicquot, whose husband was the winemaker who died, and she persuaded her father-in-law that she would run this business and created Veuve Clicquot, the widow Clicquot, which has become one of the great champagnes.
Wow.
One of the great champagnes. So again, you go, and that's why I call it Eat My Globe, things you didn't know, because you don't need to know that. Right. But it's kind of fun if you do.
Right. It's that, well, what else? What else? I've heard all the stories. Now what? And you're finding all these neat little things. Well,
things like the Wall of Wall Street. One of the kind of theories about it, was built around a Dutch settlement, the original Dutch settlement, but it was built to keep pigs out of the city, because the pigs were coming in to destroy the city. So the Wall of Wall Street actually is, which is very good, given that we talk about pork and Wall Street, and the Wall of Wall Street was built to keep pigs out of the city. Or the fact that nutmeg is the classic one, is that the British and the Dutch went to war in the 1750s, maybe, I can't remember exactly, over nutmeg, which was one of the most expensive things in the world. The British and Dutch went to war, and then they had this treaty at the place called Britta, and as part of the deal, the British got this island. They were given this island because of nutmeg. And they said, well, we don't want it particularly, but we'll keep it. So they sent some aristocrat there to run it for them, as the lieutenant governor or whatever. Yeah. And he changed the name when he arrived from New Amsterdam to New York. So New York, again, exists because of nutmeg. So when you start telling these stories, I think you can realize that history informs what we do. It's very much I've just been writing the history of curry, which all stems obviously from the British Raj, because curry is actually a British invention. Indian food and curry are two very separate things.
Sure.
So when you look at them and you go curry, people think of that as Indian food. Particularly in the US, if you go to an Indian restaurant here, it tends to be more of a British curry house than an Indian authentic, for want of a better word, Indian restaurant. Sorry, I've got to have my mouth.
There's no such thing as curry in India, right? That's just an invention.
Well, there's a word. Well, there's a word called karai, which was the Portuguese kind of word, which is a Goan word for kind of grinding things and spices and anything with these spices and grinds in it. And then you go the other way. The British took curry, or the idea of curry, from India and brought it to England. And the first curry house opened in the 1800s in Britain. Early 1800s, called the Hindustani Coffee House. And it was opened by this guy who was remarkable, who was also the person who introduced shampoo to Britain. I mean, again, it's just a great story. So what I really am saying is that when you look at any of these stories, you realize, A, we're not that different from these people who we think are thousands of years ago sometimes. Right. you look at some of the workers' complaints, the people who built the pyramids, they weren't slaves. A lot of people think they were slaves. They weren't. But people write about them, and they actually wrote complaints. And one of their biggest complaints was they weren't getting enough beer. Well, there you go. How many people today who are workers are they're not getting enough beer?
Yeah.
So we're not that different. And I think it puts, particularly in this kind of crazy political time, I think it's good to put everything in context. To go that, we've probably got a bit more technology. Hence, we're doing this interview this way during this lockdown. But actually, we're probably not that much different. I've been reading about the plagues. The bubonic plague in Europe that wiped out. But if you listen to the aristocrats and the ordinary people who wrote diaries like Samuel Pepys, the things they're complaining about is that they closed all the taverns, so he couldn't go to the taverns every night. Well, that's 500 years ago.
Sure.
And he's complaining. He's going, and that's why I'm sitting here having my cocktail here, whereas I'd probably go out to the bar and have it.
Sure.
So that's really what I'm trying to kind of share with people. And I hope people will go, we've got very good figures so far. We're getting a very good response. Lots of 5-star reviews, which is good. So if anyone does listen to it, go and please give us a 5-star review. Awesome. And the other thing is that we're not making money out of it. We didn't set it up to be a financial operation because I'm fortunate enough that I do other things where I can pay the bills.
Right.
So what it means is it's a genuine labor of love.
Wow, that's awesome, Simon. So what are you doing these days to keep yourself occupied while we're all, I know we're drinking cocktails, but what else are you doing to keep yourself occupied during these times?
Well, I'm trying not to drink too many of those. Otherwise they'll have to carry me out of here. And I'm trying to be quite disciplined.
I'm enjoying this a lot.
Oh, I'm glad you are. I think if you're not careful, you can enjoy your cocktails too much and every day. So I try and take a few days off a week where I'm being good to. But one of the things I would love to mention is this nonprofit I'm working with, particularly at this difficult time. So there's a great nonprofit called Convoy of Hope, who I work with a lot.
Great people.
Absolutely love them. They do a lot of programs overseas. So they do child hunger. They feed 300,000 kids every day around the world, which is extraordinary. They do women's empowerment programs where they really help women who are, in insecure situations and have children, and they protect them and teach them entrepreneurial programs so they can create businesses, incredible stuff. And they do a lot of agricultural development. But one of the things people often don't know about them as well is they do a lot of work in the United States as well when there are disasters here. Yeah, so they're often the first people on the site when there's a flood in Houston or a hurricane in wherever. And right now they're doing this big program called 10 million meals. And what they're trying to do is provide meals for people who just right now don't have any work. We've all been locked down. A lot of people in restaurants, the business that I love. And there's actually a couple of nonprofits that I work with who really support people in the restaurant industry. There's one called Golden Rule Charity. Go and look at them. People apply to them for grants just to pay for their meals. But Convoy of Hope, and you can look them up, convoyofhope.org. They're doing this 10 million meals. And what they're trying to do is to raise enough capital, which they have, to provide 10 million meals to people out there in any business who are struggling to feed themselves. And I think that's one of the things, I'm fortunate. We're by no means wealthy, but we're comfortable enough and we have savings. And, I can still afford to sit here with you and have a martini. But, most people in this country, the average person, and I heard about this the other day, is only $400 away from having no money at all. That's the kind of average, which is scary. And again, that's not a political thing. Let's just talk about getting food in front of people and their kids right now. So if anyone's interested, go and have a look at convoy.org. They're a wonderful organization. The people there have become like family to me. Awesome. Go and check them out. If you kind of feel moved to support them, that would be really, really meaningful to me. And every penny, they're very highly rated by Charity Navigator. They're like in the top 1%. A huge amount of what like a huge percentage of, they're one of the highest in terms of how much of what you donate goes to the people who deserve it. It's not going into overheads. It's not going into anything like that. And they're just good people. So
that's cool.
If you do care about those people out there as kind of fellow Americans, and I'm an American citizen now, then just, cheers. God bless us all.
Yeah.
But do go and check it out. Check them out, and see what you do. And if you can't, if you don't have access to them, then do something. Make sure your neighbors are okay. Text people who we've got some elderly friends who are in their apartments and they're fine, but we're texting them regularly or emailing them going, what's going on?
Yeah.
And because apart from anything else, I think, it's a lonely business if you're not with someone.
It is. It very much is.
So I just think right now, if nothing else, we can all have fun. We can have drinks and we can have cocktails and we can have our happy hours on Zoom and all of that, which is really fun.
Right.
But let's just remember there's a lot of people out there really struggling, and they're the ones who are going to be first back getting the restaurants open.
Sure.
Or getting the people in the supermarkets, not highly paid people.
Right.
Getting this country, this amazing country of ours, ready for us to get back out there and enjoy ourselves.
Well said.
Yeah, so let's why don't we, I think we should both drink to that.
I think we should. And I think you said it right. If you don't have anything to give right now, fully understandable. Check. We have a lovely woman across the street that we check in with every time we go grocery shopping or go to Costco. We give a call. What do you need? Can we help you? So, you don't have to give money. Just give yourself. Just be available.
Make sure people are there. And the other thing is, if you are fortunate enough to have a few dollars that you can spend, all the great restaurants, all the restaurants that we love, and we've had meals together. There's nothing better than breaking bread with people.
No, there's not.
Then order in. And restaurants, one of the things I really love right now is restaurants are having to be, but are being super creative. So they're doing. I saw yesterday a restaurant that's doing a complete meal for two with wine. So you can buy bottles of wine. I don't know whether you can do that in every state, but here in California, they'll set a couple. You pay for a couple of bottles of wine in your meal for two, but then if you want to, you then set up a Zoom time for when you're going to eat this meal, and the sommelier will come and talk you through the wine pairing.
What?
The chef will talk you through the meal for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they leave you to yourself, and they go off, and you get that. So what they're trying to do is to recreate different kind of aspects that we all love about this business that I'm in,
right?
And to try and keep us and to be honest, things like this, sitting with you having a cocktail, are the things that'll keep us sane for another month or however
long.
And I think, and here's the thing: it's not. I've heard some people talk about it as if it's a light switch that you just suddenly switch back on. This is going to be with us for not in this severity, but it's going to be with us for a year until we get vaccines and all of those things.
Yeah. So
let's take advantage of the new normal. One of the things I'm going to do tonight, which is why I'm just sipping on this cocktail, is I actually have some friends, and there's three couples, and they join me, and I'm going to give them a cocktail class.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that.
So tonight, I think, I have to remember, I'm making a Sazerac, which is the first cocktail, I think, ever under the term cocktail. The oldest cocktail, I think, in the United States, which is made with, well, originally with brandy, but now with rye whiskey. We're going to make a Rob Roy, which almost is like the Scotch version of a Manhattan. And then we're going to make Gimlet, which is it's a gin drink with lime, and a drink that was made for the Royal Navy. It was actually made for the Royal Navy officers to get them to drink limes so they didn't get scurvy back in the 1800s. So they would put. Yeah,
I think you told us that story in the video from 2015 when we were cooking in the kitchen.
I think I may have done, and it's a great way. All of these drinks. So it was a medicinal drink, like the gin and tonic was originally a medicinal drink. The gin and tonic was to get the Indian officers to drink tonic water, which had quinine in it, which stopped them getting malaria. So in India, so they drank gin and tonics. So
wow.
Yeah. So a lot of these drinks, and same with the old-fashioned, was the old-fashioned cocktail where it comes from, and that was one of the ways that they put medicines in it. It was considered medicinal. so a lot of this has great history, and,
wow.
and alcohol was one of the medicinal kind of, so people would have their old-fashioned cocktail in the morning, a little small one, and it would perk them up.
I like this idea. I might have to start practicing that. It's good for me, is what you're saying.
It is good for you. Well, you should go and practice your cocktails. I need to go and get ready for my cocktail class, I think.
Awesome. Well, Simon, I can't thank you enough for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure to see you again. It was nice to see Sybil for just a little bit there. Best to you. I'm going to put all the links up. I'm going to put your website, your podcast, the things that we talked about earlier. So all those links are going to be down under this video. So if you didn't catch any of that. Simon, how many books do you have now?
3.
Yeah, 3 books.
Eat My Globe, same title as the Eating for Britain. And my last one was called Fed, White and Blue, which was about me becoming an American citizen.
And that, I'm an American. So that was actually my favorite one. I love the stories. And I just wish there was video of you on half of these stories, because I just
me too.
Can't picture you in some of these situations. So I highly recommend Fed, White, and Blue. So Simon, thank you very much for joining me. Cheers to you. Cheers to Sybil. And let's talk again soon.
See you soon.
Cheers.